Hello and welcome back to Kidocracy at Large. I am Siddhant Chandra, here every Saturday to present current events and collective conditions through the lens of kidocracy. What is kidocracy? It is a call for the rule of minors and minorities. It is a powerful form of public education led by minors and minorities towards regulating adults and the majority. Through Fridays for Future, children are seeking to regulate climate-denying adults. And through BLM, Idle No More, and farmer strikes, and the global gig economy workers' protests, minorities are seeking to regulate the 1% and rule the majority. The 1% are a numerical minority, but empower a majority. Adult supremacy and majoritarianism both thrive on mastery. Adults practice and display their mastery through work, earning money, and knowing the ways of the world. Children are recruited into adulthood and work through various forms of education that promote mastery, not sovereignty. Daddy is always right, and mummy, especially tiger mummy, is the boss. And children can only train towards success in a world that is created and controlled by adults. And kids are recruited through demanding school regimes, consumerist bribes, and ADHD medication. And the majority, or the richest 1%, control the systems in which the 99% labor. And they control nowadays through AIs and algorithms. And the success and wealth of the 1% is an incentive for the 99% to aspire to. And neoliberal celebrity culture promotes their success, like Saturday Night Live, that has invited Elon Musk to guest host a show, normalizing and softening his monstrous power, like they did with Rudy Giuliani several years ago. Kidocracy stacks the categories of minors and minorities to reject the primacy of mastery and to reinstate the urgent necessity of sovereignty, to respond urgently to the climate emergency and to revive global democracy, which is currently in ICU. I want to juxtapose the mastery of AI technology and the sovereignty of the Sinixt Indigenous people who identify deeply with the element of water and recently won a court case to fish and hunt in Canada, while mastery power trips on the infinite possibilities of consciousness. Sovereignty draws sustenance from the land and water and seeks to defend both. One peaking with Icarian hubris, flying closer and closer to the sun, and the other embracing nature. Artificial Immortality, a film that opened Hot Docs Film Festival, is a field exploration of the majoritarian tendencies of humanity. The endless gaining of mastery over newer frontiers of nature. What if you could live forever? Asks the director, Ann Shin. Just imagine if it was a white man asking this question, like say Elon Musk. The fascist implications would punch you in the gut. But an Asian woman mourning the loss of her father's memories and wanting to be there for her children past her death makes it okay for all of us to flirt with the possibilities of majoritarian ableism. Though Ann Shin guides our tour of this field as a self-proclaimed Luddite, the version we get here is of the 1%'s view of AI technology. A dangerous field with no ethical oversight, in which the main players are the military, the police, and of course, ubiquitous neoliberal global capitalism. Immortality is achieved through creating mind files, information about yourself, into an AI avatar, which then begins to think on its feet and live forever, past the death of its human original. Deepak Chopra has created a digital avatar so that he can speak to his grandkids, buying real estate of the future. This is adult supremacy to the power of adult supremacy. 1% to the power of 1%. In the film, digital Deepak appears on a laptop monitor, and Ann Shin asks him the question, "What do you think about people seeking immortality on Earth?" And he replies, "There is no need to wait for death and heaven to prove that eternity is real." We meet other more likable AIs like Bina48, based on an interesting black woman, and Canon Bodhisattva, an AI representative of the Buddha, before finally arriving at the question, are we creating an AI supreme being in our own likeness? And what if the creation outsmarts the creator? We are back to HAL again, the nightmare scenario explored in 2001's Space Odyssey. In VO, a short film by Nicholas Gourault, we ride along in self-driving cars while the vehicle operators, the VOs, the testers of the software, tell us about what it feels like to let go of the steering wheel. One says, when you let go of the wheel for the first time and push that button, and the car turns by itself, it is terrifying and absolutely exhilarating. Another says, never trust the software, but adds, once the software got pretty good, it did not misbehave very often. And once you trust it, it was like having your mother drive you. This film begins and ends with the video clip of the emergency driver who was in the self-driving Uber that killed a cyclist in Arizona in 2018. We see a woman looking down at her knee, attentive and amused, looking up a couple of seconds before the car hit the cyclist. Her Netflix streaming log showed that she was watching Bones and the blind auditions, a metaphor for humanity. In the film, The Gig is Up by Shannon Walsh, we see that the AIs have already divided us into masters and slaves. We see how the algorithms of Mechanical Turk, Uber, Lyft, and Deliveroo enslave global gig workers. The strategy of the capitalist masters is to enable and promote extreme consumerism, saturate the market, and squeeze dry a labor force that is rendered invisible. They are rendered invisible to the point of death, as in the case of a Deliveroo cyclist. Most gig workers in the global north happen to be either undocumented workers or unemployable because they have bad teeth or they have a prison record, or minors, children, teenagers. Gig workers in Lagos, Nigeria, are paid in Amazon gift cards, which are hard to encash. Some gig workers in the US are paid 2 cents a job. HAL has definitely taken over. What powers this takeover? Extreme consumerism, enabled by neoliberal capitalism, subsidizing cheap convenience for their customers, paid for by gig economy slavery, both local and global, by offering that feeling of mastery that people achieve through pressing a button to have their most trivial, immediate needs taken care of by invisible slaves. And it is only when some workers in the global north begin to organize and fight for their right to be seen as employees and not quote-unquote independent contractors, do they begin to retrieve their sovereignty from the vicious grip of the extractive AI algorithm and the mastery of techno-capitalism. Now to sovereignty. Rick Desautels, a Sinixt Indigenous man who lives in Washington State of the US, just south of the border, would come up every year to hunt and fish in Canada like his ancestors did, long before the borders were drawn. The Sinixt people lived on both sides of the border, but seemed to settle in the US, and the Canadian government declared them extinct in 1955. In 2010, when he came up to Canada, he was charged for hunting an elk, which led him to a legal fight to have the Sinixt people recognized as existing and having hunting and fishing rights in Canada. Last month, as a Guardian report states, Canada's highest court ruled that Desautels and the 4,000 other members of the Colville Confederated Tribes in Washington State were successors to the Sinixt, and as a result, that they enjoy constitutionally protected indigenous rights to hunt their traditional lands in Canada. Desautels celebrated this victory with his community, this victory for indigenous sovereignty and their connection to ancestral land and water. In a short film by Kai Kabodina called Sinixt Laws and the Language of Water, elder and matriarch Marilyn James talks about the Sinixt women's deeply felt responsibility for land and water. She states that the Sinixt have only two laws. One declares that the law of the land is dictated by the land, and another states that the land belongs to the women. Because women bring life into this world, the Sinixt believe that they are the right people to uphold and defend the land and water that nourishes all life. Life is one long continuous existence and inhabitation, says Marilyn James. And it is our responsibility to respect and care for the land and water in a way that enhances it for future generations. She reminds us all we are big bags of water walking around. Indeed, our bodies are up to 60% water. And our endangered planet is covered, 71% of its surface is covered by water, where life originated. Because the mastery promoting mafia of neoliberal capitalism, the worshippers of consciousness, pandering convenience, have taken over our lives and automated it. Currently, humanity is that woman watching the series Bones on her cell phone while her self-driving Uber runs over a cyclist. To protect ourselves, let us emulate the Sinixt people's sovereignty and loosen the chokehold of mastery on our collective psyches. That terrifying and exhilarating moment when the test driver lets go of the steering wheel, letting the AI take over, marks humanity's current Icarian moment. Icarus, in Greek mythology, flew high and higher despite his father's warnings to not fly too high, too close to the sun, or the wax would melt in the wings. He must have felt the same sense of terrifying exhilaration before the feathers falling off and crashing into the sea. Let us remember the more than 3 million people who have died of clogged lungs over the last year, while more struggle to breathe. Let us recognize the necessity of beginning a post-Icarian era. Let us recognize, like Daedalus did, Daedalus, the father of Icarus and inventor of the wings, let us recognize, like he did, that techno mastery is self-blinding, as when he gave up his wings at the temple of Apollo, the sun god, nature. Let us control runaway technology and the cult of mastery and disable Hal. Let us become like the sovereign Sinixt people. Let us support and collaborate with the planet's indigenous people, defending the land and water. Let us become post-Icarian. Till next week, bye.